A chance encounter between a homeless boy and a distracted millionaire leads to an unexpected bond that unravels a decade-old mystery. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Just throw it in the dumpster like the others. The kitchen door slammed shut, cutting off the angry voice inside. Tommy pressed himself against the icy brick wall, his heart pounding. The sound of approaching footsteps made him shrink deeper into the shadows of the Chicago alley. A cook emerged, muttering under his breath, carrying a bag of what Tommy hoped would be edible leftovers. The 12-year-old's stomach cramped at the thought of food. He hadn't eaten since finding half a sandwich yesterday morning. The bag landed in the dumpster with a soft thud, and the cook disappeared back inside, leaving a trail of steam in the frigid air. Tommy counted to 30 just to be sure, then crept forward. His fingers, red and raw from the winter cold, gripped the dumpster's edge as he pulled himself up. "Hey kid." The kitchen door burst open again. "Get out of here before I call the cops." Tommy dropped back down, his threadbare sneakers hitting the slush-covered ground. He ran, lungs burning with each icy breath, out of the alley and onto Michigan Avenue. The evening crowd swallowed him. Business people heading home, tourists clutching shopping bags, everyone too busy with their own lives to notice one small dirty boy. That's when he saw him, a tall man in an expensive coat, pacing near the curb with a phone pressed to his ear. Even from 20 feet away, Tommy could hear his voice cutting through the street noise. "I don't care what the shareholders think, Reynolds. If we don't close this deal by midnight?" The man stepped off the curb, completely oblivious to the taxi that had just run the yellow light. Tommy didn't think. His body moved before his mind could catch up. He sprinted forward, hands outstretched, and shoved the man with all his strength. The man's phone went flying as he stumbled backward onto the sidewalk. Tommy felt a searing pain, heard screeching brakes and screams, then everything went dark. The world came back in fragments. Sirens. Someone holding his hand. A woman's voice saying, "Stay with us, sweetie." The rattling of a gurney. Tommy tried to sit up, to run. He couldn't go to the hospital, couldn't let them find out about him, but gentle hands held him down. "The other guy," he managed to croak. "Is he okay?" "Mr. Blackwood is in the other ambulance," a paramedic told him. "You saved his life, kid." The emergency room was a blur of bright lights and urgent voices. Tommy kept trying to leave, but every time he moved, pain shot through his left side. A doctor was saying something about x-rays and a concussion when a commotion erupted in the hallway. "I need to see him." A man's voice. "The boy who pushed me out of the way, where is he?" Tommy turned his head to see the man from the street, now sporting a bandage above his eye, arguing with a nurse. Their eyes met, and the man's face softened. "Thank God you're awake." He limped into the room. "I'm Marcus Blackwood. You saved my life." Tommy tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "I'm nobody. Just happened to be there." Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed, wincing slightly. "Nobody? You risked your life for a stranger. That makes you somebody very special in my book." He paused, studying Tommy's face. "What's your name, son?" Tommy hesitated. Names were dangerous. Names led to questions, to papers, to people finding out things they shouldn't. But something in Marcus's eyes, concern, maybe, or genuine gratitude, made him answer. "Tommy," he whispered. "Well, Tommy, we need to," Marcus began, but was interrupted by a new voice at the door. "Excuse me, I'm Jennifer Hayes with Child Protective Services. We received a call about an unaccompanied minor." Tommy's heart rate monitor began beeping faster. He looked frantically around the room, calculating distances, looking for exits. Marcus must have noticed because he shifted slightly, blocking Jennifer's view. "The boys had a traumatic experience," Marcus said smoothly. "Perhaps we could discuss this tomorrow?" But Tommy was already pulling at his fore, ignoring the sharp sting as it came loose. He had to get out, had to run, had to. His legs buckled the moment they hit the floor. Strong arms caught him before he could fall. "Marcus," moving surprisingly fast for an injured man. "Easy there," Marcus said softly, helping him back onto the bed. "You're safe here. I promise." Tommy wanted to believe him. After years on the street, he'd learned that promises meant nothing. But as the adrenaline faded and the pain medication pulled him under, he found himself holding onto those words like a lifeline. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was Marcus positioning himself between the bed and the door, as if standing guard. For the first time in years, Tommy let himself drift off without fear of what might happen while he slept. The morning sun painted strange shadows through the hospital window blinds. Tommy sat cross-legged on the bed, watching Marcus pace the room while arguing on a new phone. I don't care what the board thinks, Peterson. Cancel my meetings for the next 48 hours? He paused, listening. Well, then uncancel them. I'm taking a personal day. Tommy fidgeted with his blanket. The nurses had given him clean clothes from the donation bin, all too big, but better than his frozen ones. He'd managed to avoid most questions so far, but he knew his luck wouldn't last. Marcus ended his call and turned to Tommy with a warm smile. How are you feeling? I'm fine. Tommy's standard answer. They said I can leave today. About that? Marcus pulled up a chair. The doctors want to keep you for observation, but I spoke with Ms. Hayes from Social Services. She's agreed to give us 24 hours to sort things out. He leaned forward. You saved my life, Tommy. I'd like to reward you. Anything you want, name it. Tommy's throat tightened. He'd rehearsed this moment all night, but now the words stuck like thorns. Would you maybe? He took a deep breath. Could you pretend to be my dad? Just for one day? The silence that followed felt endless. Marcus's face softened in a way Tommy hadn't expected. Why just one day? Marcus asked gently. Tommy stared at his hands. Because that's all I need. Just to know what it feels like. Before. He couldn't finish. Before they put you in the system, Marcus completed quietly. He stood up, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. Tell me why, Tommy. Help me understand. I see them sometimes. Dads with their kids. They get ice cream or go to parks or just talk. Like it's normal. Tommy's voice cracked. I just want one normal day. Before whatever happens next. Marcus walked to the window, his back to Tommy. When he turned around, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Then let's make it the best normal day ever. Their first stop was a department store. Tommy tried to protest, but Marcus insisted he couldn't be a proper dad with his son in oversized charity clothes. The sales assistant's eyes widened at their appearance. Marcus in his rumpled designer suit, Tommy in baggy sweatpants, but Marcus's credit card quickly smoothed any concerns. I can't take all this, Tommy whispered as Marcus piled jeans and sweaters into a cart. You can and you will. Marcus held up 2 winter coats. Green or blue? But, Tommy? Marcus knelt to meet his eyes. Today I'm your dad. And dads get to spoil their kids sometimes. Tommy chose the blue coat. Navy Pier was quieter in winter, but still magical to Tommy's eyes. Marcus bought them hot dogs from a vendor, and Tommy tried not to inhale his in 2 bites. First hot dog? Marcus asked, noticing Tommy's expression. First proper one. Usually just get the ends they throw away. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice light. Well, we're just getting started. Ever been on a Ferris wheel? The view from the top was breathtaking. Chicago stretched out before them, sunlight glinting off snow-covered buildings. Tommy pressed his face against the glass, full of questions. What's that building with the pointy top? The Hancock Center. My company owns it. You own a whole building? Several. Marcus smiled at Tommy's amazement. We develop properties across the city. Is that why you were arguing about shareholders yesterday? Marcus looked surprised. You know about shareholders? I hear things. People talk business on their phones in the street. Tommy hesitated. Also, I sneak into the library sometimes. Read whatever I can. The conversation flowed easily after that. Tommy's sharp mind and curiosity delighted Marcus, who explained business concepts in between rides. They were in line for the carousel when Tommy stumbled. Just dizzy, he insisted, but Marcus saw him wince as he touched his side. When was the last time you saw a doctor? Before yesterday? Tommy shrugged. Can't remember. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. No checkups. No vaccinations. No one to notice if something was wrong. He was about to suggest heading back when Tommy's eyes lit up at the sight of the carousel. Can we? Please, Dad. The word hung between them, delicate as frost. Marcus swallowed hard. Of course we can, son. Later, as the sun set over Lake Michigan, they sat on a bench sharing a pretzel. Tommy had grown quieter, more withdrawn with each passing hour. We should head back, Marcus said softly. It's getting cold. I know. Tommy stood, squaring his small shoulders. Thank you for today. It was perfect. Tommy? I should go. Before. Tommy took a step back. It's better if I just go. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Tommy's voice shook. Because if I stay longer, I'll start thinking maybe this could be real. And it can't be. I know that. Why can't it? Because good things don't happen to kids like me. Tommy backed away another step. They just don't. Marcus stood slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. They can't. If we let them. Tommy shook his head, tears freezing on his cheeks. He turned to run and collapsed. This time Marcus was ready. He caught Tommy before he hit the ground, feeling the heat of fever through the new blue coat. As he called for an ambulance, holding the boy close, Marcus made a silent promise. This wouldn't be their only day as father and son. Not if he had anything to say about it. Pneumonia. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. And signs of previous untreated injuries. We need to admit him immediately. Marcus stood at Tommy's bedside, watching the boy's fitful sleep. The fever had spiked during the ambulance ride, and now tubes and monitors surrounded him like a technological cage. Mr. Blackwood. Jennifer Hayes appeared in the doorway, her face professionally neutral. We need to discuss Tommy's situation. Marcus followed her into the hallway, closing the door softly behind him. He needs treatment. What he needs is proper legal guardianship. Jennifer opened a folder. No birth certificate, no social security number, no school records. Do you understand the position this puts me in? I understand that a 12-year-old boy is seriously ill. Exactly. A minor with no legal guardian who's been living on the streets for who knows how long. My job is to protect him. By throwing him into the system? Marcus's voice rose. Where he'll be just another case number? As opposed to what? Jennifer's professional mask cracked slightly. Letting him stay with a stranger who spent one day playing father? A nurse hurried past them into Tommy's room. Through the window, Marcus saw Tommy thrashing in his sleep, monitors beeping erratically. He's having a nightmare, Marcus said, moving toward the door. Jennifer blocked his path. Mr. Blackwood, I need you to understand. You have no legal right to be here. Inside the room, Tommy's eyes flew open. No, please, don't take me. His breathing came in short gasps. Marcus shouldered past Jennifer. I'm here, Tommy. You're safe. Can't breathe. Tommy's fingers clutched at his chest. They're going to take me away? Nobody's taking you anywhere. Marcus sat on the bed, gathering Tommy into his arms despite the tangle of tubes. Just breathe with me. In and out. That's it. Jennifer watched from the doorway as Tommy's breathing slowly steadied. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Mr. Blackwood, she said quietly. May I speak with Tommy alone? Marcus felt Tommy tense. It's okay, he whispered. Remember what I said about being safe? Tommy nodded reluctantly. As Marcus stood, Tommy grabbed his sleeve. You'll come back? Wild horses couldn't stop me. Jennifer waited until Marcus left before taking his place in the chair. Tommy, I know you're scared. But I need you to understand that we want to help you. I don't need help. Tommy's voice was hoarse. I was doing fine. You have pneumonia. Previous broken bones that never properly healed. Malnutrition. Jennifer leaned forward. That's not fine, Tommy. Better than foster care. Tommy's eyes darkened. I've heard stories. Not all foster homes. I'm not going. Tommy tried to sit up, setting off a cascade of monitor alarms. You can't make me. A nurse rushed in, followed by Marcus. As they helped Tommy lie back down, something slipped from beneath his hospital gown, a silver chain with a small medallion. Tommy's hand flew to his chest, panic replacing anger. Give it back. The nurse had already picked it up. We need to remove all jewelry for your tests. No. Tommy lunged for the medallion, nearly pulling out his four. Please. It's all I have left of her. Marcus caught a glimpse of the medallion as the nurse held it away. Silver, intricately carved, with a distinctive pattern he couldn't quite place. Something about it tugged at his memory. Her? Jennifer asked gently. Who gave you this, Tommy? Tommy pressed his lips together, tears sliding down his face. Let him keep it, Marcus said. Something in his tone made both Jennifer and the nurse turn. It's clearly important to him. The nurse hesitated, then handed the medallion back. Tommy clutched it like a lifeline. Mr. Blackwood, Jennifer said. A word? In the hallway she faced him squarely. I'm not heartless. I can see the connection you've formed. But there are procedures, laws. Then tell me what they are. Marcus met her gaze. Tell me what I need to do to keep him safe. Legally. Jennifer studied him for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely. She sighed, opening her folder again. Emergency temporary guardianship might be possible, given the medical situation. But you'd need to pass background checks, home studies, whatever it takes. Back in the room, Tommy had fallen into an uneasy sleep, one hand still gripping the medallion. Marcus watched him through the window as Jennifer listed requirements and regulations. The medallion glinted in the hospital lights, and again Marcus felt that nagging sense of recognition. Where had he seen that pattern before? Why did it seem so familiar? Mr. Blackwood? Jennifer's voice broke through his thoughts. Are you sure you want to pursue this? Marcus thought of Tommy's face at Navy Pier, full of wonder and questions. Thought of his courage in the street, his fierce independence, his broken voice asking for just one day with a father. Yes, he said. I'm sure. Neither of them noticed Tommy's fingers tighten around the medallion, or the small smile that crossed his sleeping face. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors and Tommy's even breathing. Marcus sat in the now familiar chair, watching the boy sleep, his mind racing with possibilities. The medallion lay on Tommy's chest, catching the light, and for the 100th time, Marcus studied its intricate pattern. Then it hit him. His hands trembling, Marcus leaned forward for a closer look. The delicate silver filigree, the small sapphire at its center, the distinctive rose pattern that the jeweler had custom designed. Impossible, he whispered. 5 years earlier. It's beautiful. Sarah held the medallion up to the light, her eyes shining. Marcus, you shouldn't have. Only the best for our first anniversary. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender shampoo. Look at the inscription. She turned it over. To my North Star. Oh, Marcus, because you always help me find my way home. Now, in the hospital room, Marcus's throat tightened at the memory. He remembered how things had changed after that. Sarah's growing distraction, the late nights at her volunteer work, the growing distance between them. Then the morning he woke to find her gone, leaving only a note. I'm sorry. Some paths we have to walk alone. The police had found nothing. Private investigators had traced her movements to a homeless shelter where she volunteered. Then, nothing. As if she'd vanished into thin air. Tommy stirred, his hand automatically reaching for the medallion. Marcus touched his arm gently. Tommy? Can you tell me about the person who gave you this? The boy's eyes opened slowly, still glazed with fever. The angel lady? Marcus's heart skipped. Angel lady? That's what all the street kids called her. Tommy's voice was dreamy, distant. She brought us food, blankets. Said everyone deserved a chance. What did she look like? Pretty. Blonde hair she kept in a braid. Blue eyes that smiled even when she wasn't. Tommy frowned. But sad sometimes when she thought no one was looking. Marcus pulled out his phone, hands shaking as he pulled up a photo. Like this? Tommy's eyes widened. That's her. But her hair was different. And she called herself Mary. Mary. Sarah's middle name. Marcus excused himself, stepping into the hallway. His phone was already dialing. Davidson Investigations? This is Marcus Blackwood. I need you to reopen my wife's case. Focus on any mentions of a Mary working with homeless children in the last 5 years. He paused, listening. Yes, I understand the cost. Money is no object. Back in the room, Tommy was more alert, watching him with wary eyes. The angel lady, she was someone important to you? Marcus sat down heavily. She was my wife, Sarah. His voice cracked on her name. She disappeared 5 years ago. She never said. Tommy clutched the medallion tighter. But she talked about you sometimes. Not by name, but she said she had to leave someone she loved to protect something bigger. Protect what? The truth, she said. Tommy's face scrunched in concentration. She was gathering evidence about something. Said powerful people were hurting families, making them homeless. Marcus felt the world tilt. Those last months, Sarah had been increasingly upset about his company's latest development project. He dismissed her concerns about displaced residents, focused only on profits and shareholder value. When did you last see her? He asked, dreading the answer. 3 months ago. Tommy's voice dropped to a whisper. She was scared. Said someone had found her. She gave me the medallion, made me promise to keep it safe. His eyes filled with tears. Next day she was gone. Nobody's seen her since. Marcus's phone buzzed, a preliminary report from the investigators. His eyes scanned the text. Mary Andrews, working at multiple shelters. Last known residence. She lived on Monroe Street, Tommy said suddenly. Above the old bookstore. Small apartment, lots of papers everywhere. She let me stay sometimes when it was really cold. Marcus showed the address on his phone. Here? Tommy nodded. Mr. Blackwood? Jennifer Hayes stood in the doorway. I have those guardianship papers you requested. They'll have to wait. Marcus was already pulling on his coat. I need to. Don't go. Tommy's voice was sharp with fear. The angel lady, Sarah, she said if anything happened to her, the evidence was in the medallion. Marcus froze. In the medallion? Tommy's fingers worked at the silver disc until something clicked. The face of the medallion swung open like a locket, revealing a tiny USB drive nestled inside. She said. Tommy swallowed hard. She said to give it to someone who'd know what to do with it. Someone who could make things right. Marcus stared at the drive that might hold the answers to his wife's disappearance, and possibly her fate. Sarah's last message. Her final trust. Jennifer, he said quietly. Those guardianship papers. How soon can we make them official? Because whatever was on that drive, whatever truth Sarah had died protecting, he knew one thing for certain. He and Tommy were in this together now. For Sarah. For justice. For the chance to make things right. Tommy held out the medallion, his young face serious. She wanted you to find it. Find her. Marcus took the medallion, feeling its familiar weight. Then that's exactly what we're going to do. The lock on Sarah's apartment hadn't been changed in 5 years. Marcus stood at the door, key in hand, remembering how many times he'd imagined finding her here. But never like this. You okay? Tommy asked from his wheelchair. The doctors had only released him on the condition that he remain seated, with Marcus as his temporary guardian. Yeah. Marcus took a deep breath and turned the key. The apartment was small but meticulously organized. Maps covered one wall, dotted with colored pins and connected by threads. Filing cabinets lined another wall, each drawer carefully labeled. The air smelled faintly of lavender, Sarah's scent. Her command center, Tommy said quietly. She spent a lot of time at that desk. Marcus approached the desk, running his fingers over the worn wood. Post-it notes covered the surface, filled with Sarah's familiar handwriting. Addresses, names, schedules. A photo board hung above it, showing dozens of children's faces. I know them, Tommy pointed. That's Maya, she aged out of foster care last year. And Carlos, he was living in the abandoned factory until the angel lady found him. And that's... His voice trailed off as Marcus picked up a framed photo. It showed Sarah surrounded by a group of children at what looked like a Christmas party. She was laughing, her hair in the braid Tommy had described, her eyes bright with purpose. I never knew, Marcus whispered. All those nights she said she was at charity functions? She was. Tommy wheeled himself to a filing cabinet. But not the kind you thought. The drawer was marked safe houses. Inside, Marcus found detailed records of properties across Chicago, abandoned buildings converted into temporary shelters, sympathetic landlords who looked the other way, a network of volunteers who provided food and supplies. There's more. Tommy pointed to a laptop on the desk. She kept everything on there. Marcus opened it, and the USB drive from the medallion felt heavy in his pocket. Before he could insert it, a noise at the door made them both freeze. Mary? Are you finally back? A woman's voice. The kids at Jackson Street are asking. She stopped short at the sight of Marcus and Tommy. She was elderly, wearing a worn coat and carrying a bag of groceries. Mrs. Chin, Tommy said quickly. It's okay. This is Marcus, Sarah's husband. The woman's eyes widened. The one she left to protect the children? Marcus felt like he'd been punched. What do you mean, protect the children? Mrs. Chin set down her groceries. Perhaps we should talk. Over the next hour, in Sarah's small kitchen, Mrs. Chin revealed the extent of the network Sarah had built. Safe houses across the city. Volunteers from all walks of life. A underground railroad for Chicago's forgotten children. She discovered something, Mrs. Chin said, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. About why so many families were ending up on the streets. She said she had evidence, but it was dangerous. Evidence against whom? Mrs. Chin glanced at Tommy, then back to Marcus. Your company, Mr. Blackwood. And others like it. Marcus inserted the USB drive with trembling fingers. Documents filled the screen, emails, contracts, photographs. Evidence of systematic corruption. Properties deliberately devalued, families forced out, kickbacks to officials who looked the other way. She tried to tell me, he said hoarsely. About the developments, the evictions. I didn't listen. She never blamed you, Tommy said suddenly. She said you were a good man who'd lost his way. That's why she left the evidence for you to find. A knock at the door made them all jump. Mrs. Chin peered through the peephole, then smiled. It's okay, she said, opening the door. Their family. 3 teenagers entered, stopping short at the sight of Marcus. But their faces lit up when they saw Tommy. Little man. The oldest, a girl with bright blue hair, rushed to hug him. We heard you were in the hospital. Angel Lady's husband found me, Tommy explained. The teenagers exchanged looks. The blue-haired girl stepped forward. I'm Jade. Sarah, the Angel Lady, she saved my life. All our lives. She pulled out her phone, showing Marcus a photo. This was the last time we saw her. The photo showed Sarah outside a warehouse, talking intensely with a man Marcus recognized, his company's head of security. When was this taken? 3 months ago. The day before she disappeared. Jade's voice hardened. The day before the warehouse burned down. Marcus stared at the photo, pieces clicking into place. The warehouse had been full of documents, evidence of years of corruption. The fire had been ruled an accident. She knew, he whispered. She knew they were coming for her. That's why she gave me the medallion, Tommy said. She knew you'd figure it out. Marcus looked around the apartment, at the maps showing the scope of Chicago's homeless youth crisis, at the files documenting years of Sarah's work, at the faces of the children she'd helped. His wife's real legacy. Mrs. Chin, he said, standing. I need you to gather everyone who was part of Sarah's network. Tonight. Why tonight? Marcus picked up the laptop, his jaw set. Because we're going to finish what Sarah started. And we're going to need help. Tommy wheeled himself to Marcus's side. We'll find her, right? Marcus put a hand on Tommy's shoulder, looking at the wall of children's faces, Sarah's children. They're children now. We'll find her, he promised. And we'll protect them all. Just like she would have wanted. There's a false back. Tommy wheeled himself to the bookshelf in Sarah's apartment, reaching for a worn copy of Great Expectations. With practiced fingers, he pressed something behind the book and a panel clicked open. Marcus stared at the hidden compartment. Inside lay a stack of leather-bound journals and a bundle of unmailed letters, all addressed to him. She wrote to you almost every day, Tommy said softly. But she couldn't send them. Said it would put you in danger. Marcus picked up the first letter, dated 5 years ago. Sarah's familiar handwriting blurred before his eyes. My dearest Marcus, today I found proof of what I've suspected for months. Remember the Wilson Heights project? The abandoned buildings we're demolishing? They weren't abandoned. Rodriguez and his team have been forcing families out, using building code violations they created themselves. They're targeting the poorest neighborhoods, the ones without resources to fight back. I tried talking to the board, but they dismissed me as your bleeding heart wife. If only they knew I have copies of every document, every email, every payoff. Marcus's hands shook as he picked up the next letter. I confronted Rodriguez today. He laughed. Said it was just business. Then he showed me photos, of you, of me, of the children at the shelter. Said accidents happen all the time in construction zones. I can't let them hurt those families. And I can't let them hurt you. So I'm doing the only thing I can. I'm leaving. To protect you. To gather evidence. To help the people we've hurt. Forgive me. She started with one safe house, Tommy said, watching Marcus read. Then another. Then another. Every time your company forced people out, she found them places to go. Marcus moved to the journals. Each page documented the human cost of his company's actions. Families separated, children lost to the system, communities destroyed. Sarah had recorded it all, building her case piece by piece. Then he found the entry about Tommy. Met a remarkable boy today. Tommy. His family lived in the Riverside apartments before the renovation project. Father died in construction accident. One of Rodriguez's examples. Mother disappeared into the system. Tommy's been surviving on his own for 2 years, sleeping in the very buildings we're demolishing. He reminds me so much of Marcus at that age. Same sharp mind. Same hidden gentleness. Same determination to survive. I couldn't save his father. Couldn't find his mother. But I can protect him. And maybe somehow he'll help lead Marcus back to the truth. Marcus looked at Tommy, seeing him with new eyes. Your father? He worked construction? Tommy nodded. Mom said he complained about safety violations. Then a wall collapsed. His voice grew quiet. They paid her to keep quiet. When the money ran out, we lost the apartment. She couldn't handle it. Marcus remembered signing off on the Riverside project. He'd never even read the safety reports. The next journal entry was stained with tears. Rodriguez knows I'm gathering evidence. Says if I go public, Marcus will be implicated in everything. He's right. Marcus signed the papers even if he didn't know what he was signing. They've made him complicit. But I know my husband. Know his heart. He's lost his way, but when he learns the truth, he'll do what's right. I have to believe that. I'm getting close to proving the whole conspiracy. But they're getting close to finding me. If anything happens, I've prepared everything Marcus will need. The medallion, the drive, the records. And Tommy, brave, brilliant Tommy who survived everything we did to his family. He'll help Marcus understand. My love, if you're reading this, know that I never stopped loving you. And know that it's not too late to make things right. The final entry was dated 3 months ago. They found me. The warehouse fire was a warning. But I have copies of everything now, proof of corruption going back 20 years. Names, dates, payoffs. Enough to bring down Rodriguez and everyone involved. Tommy has the medallion. He'll keep it safe until he finds you. And you'll know what to do. I have to run. But remember what I told you on our wedding day? You have the power to build things or destroy them. It's time to rebuild, my love. Starting with Tommy's family. I'll find a way back to you. I promise. She left that night, Tommy said, his voice thick with tears. Made me promise not to open the medallion until I found you. Said everything would make sense when the time was right. Marcus closed the journal, his world forever altered. Every luxury he'd enjoyed, every profit he'd celebrated, all built on the pain of families like Tommy's. I knew about the corruption, Tommy said quietly. Could have told you that first day. But she made me promise to let you discover it yourself. Said you needed to find your own way back. Marcus knelt beside Tommy's wheelchair. I'm so sorry. For everything my company did to your family. For not seeing what Sarah was trying to show me. She said you'd say that. Tommy managed a small smile. She also said sorry isn't enough. We have to fix it. Marcus looked at the evidence Sarah had gathered, the lives she tried to protect, the truth she might have died to expose. Then that's what we'll do, he said. Together. For Sarah. For your father. For all the families we hurt. Where do we start? Marcus picked up Sarah's last journal, his jaw set. By finishing what she started. And making sure Rodriguez and his people never hurt another family again. The conference room at Hayes & Associates buzzed with tension. Jennifer Hayes spread documents across the mahogany table, her expression grim as she addressed the gathered group. What we're about to do, she said, will make us some powerful enemies. Marcus nodded, scanning the faces around the table. Mrs. Chin, now representing Sarah's network of volunteers. Carlos and Jade, speaking for the street kids. His own team of corporate lawyers, looking uncomfortable in the presence of social workers and community activists. Rodriguez has friends in high places, Marcus said. Including Judge Harrison, who's handling Tommy's custody case. The same judge who dismissed complaints about the Riverside accident? Jennifer's eyes narrowed. That's not a coincidence. Tommy sat between Marcus and Jennifer, fidgeting with his medallion. The physical therapy was helping. He could walk short distances now, but the emotional strain showed in his face. I don't understand, he said. Why do we need a judge? Can't I just stay with Marcus? Jennifer gentled her voice. It's complicated, Tommy. Your mother never officially lost custody. She's still legally. She left me. Tommy's outburst silenced the room. 2 years ago. Said she'd be back in a week. I waited a month. His voice cracked. The angel lady, Sarah. She was more of a mother to me than... Marcus put a steadying hand on Tommy's shoulder. We'll find her, make sure she's okay. But right now, we need to focus on keeping you safe. That's where I come in. A new voice joined them. Lisa Morgan, investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune, stood in the doorway. My sources confirm Rodriguez is planning something. He knows we're gathering evidence. Then we move faster. Marcus opened his laptop, bringing up Sarah's files. Mrs. Chin, how many families are willing to testify? 12 so far. More coming forward every day. Good. Jennifer made notes. We'll need... Her words cut off as Tommy suddenly stiffened. Through the conference room's glass wall, they saw a familiar figure striding through the office. Rodriguez, Marcus growled. The head of security looked different from his photo with Sarah. Harder, colder. 2 police officers flanked him. Mr. Blackwood. Rodriguez's smile didn't reach his eyes. We need to talk about your wife's unauthorized activities. You mean her evidence of your corruption? Marcus stood, positioning himself between Rodriguez and Tommy. I mean her breaking and entering, theft of corporate documents, interference with legal business operations. Rodriguez's smile widened. Judge Harrison signed the warrants an hour ago. For her arrest, and the seizure of any materials in her possession. Sarah's been missing for 3 months, Jennifer cut in. Convenient timing. Missing? Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Or hiding after realizing the consequences of her actions. Either way, the boy needs to come with us. Judge Harrison's orders, He's to be placed in state custody pending investigation. Tommy's chair scraped back. But before he could run, Lisa Morgan stepped forward, phone recording. Chief Rodriguez, would you care to comment on the evidence connecting you to Thomas Rivera's death at the Riverside site? Or the subsequent pressure on his widow to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Rodriguez's smile slipped. Who are you? Lisa Morgan, Chicago Tribune. We're running a series on corporate corruption and homeless youth. Would you like to make a statement about your relationship with Judge Harrison? Or the pattern of suspicious accidents involving whistleblowers? The police officers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Officers, Jennifer said smoothly, I have Judge Martinez's emergency stay right here, superseding Judge Harrison's order. Along with sworn statements from multiple witnesses about threats made against Sarah Blackwood. This isn't over, Rodriguez snarled. No, Marcus agreed. It's just beginning. After Rodriguez stormed out, the room erupted in activity. Jennifer coordinated with other law firms. Lisa Morgan arranged interviews with Sarah's network. Mrs. Chin organized safe houses for families coming forward to testify. Marcus. Tommy's voice was small. What if they find my mom? What if she wants me back? Marcus knelt beside him. Then we'll deal with it. Together. But nothing is taking you away from me. I promise. Sarah made the same promise. And she kept it, didn't she? She made sure you found me. Made sure I found my way back to what matters. Tommy managed a weak smile. What do we do now? Now? Marcus looked around at their growing army of allies. We do what Sarah would do. We fight back. We protect our family. All of them. Jennifer cleared her throat. Speaking of family, she held up a document. Judge Martinez didn't just grant the stay. She's approved emergency guardianship. Congratulations, you too. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? Jennifer smiled. It's temporary pending the full hearing. But for now, you're officially family. Marcus pulled Tommy into a hug, feeling the boy's tears soak his shirt. Around them, the work continued. Evidence being organized, testimonies recorded, battle plans drawn. Rodriguez is right about one thing, Lisa Morgan said. This isn't over. No, Marcus agreed, holding his son. But for the first time since Sarah left, I know we're going to win. What do you think makes the nightmares come? Dr. Wilson's office was filled with soft light from the late afternoon sun. She sat across from Tommy, her kind face free of judgment. Tommy fiddled with the medallion, his constant companion. Different things. Sometimes I'm back on the streets. Sometimes I'm watching my dad's accident. Sometimes. He swallowed hard. Sometimes Sarah disappears again, and this time Marcus goes with her. Outside the office, Marcus sat in the waiting room, pretending to work on his laptop. Really, he was thinking about his own therapy session earlier that week. You're carrying a lot of guilt, Dr. Wilson had said. About Sarah, about Tommy's father, about all the families affected by your company's actions. Shouldn't I feel guilty? Guilt can motivate change, Marcus. But it can also paralyze us when we need to move forward. The door opened and Tommy emerged, looking drained but lighter somehow. It was their fourth week of therapy, both individual and family sessions. Dr. Wilson had been recommended by Jennifer Hayes, experienced with trauma and attachment issues. Ice cream? Marcus asked, their post-therapy tradition. Tommy nodded, managing a small smile. They walked to the little parlor 2 blocks away, Tommy's limp barely noticeable now after weeks of physical therapy. Dr. Wilson says it's okay to be scared, Tommy said suddenly, staring at his rocky road. About everything changing. She told me the same thing. Marcus poked at his vanilla. Change is hard, even good change. What if? Tommy took a deep breath. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough at being a son? Hey. Marcus reached across the table. You don't have to be good enough at anything. You just have to be you. But you gave up so much. Your job, your position. I gave up things that didn't matter for something that does. Marcus squeezed Tommy's hand. You and Sarah taught me that. Later that night, the nightmare came again. Marcus heard the scream from his room and was at Tommy's door in seconds. I'm here, he said, gathering the trembling boy in his arms. I'm here. She was there, Tommy choked out. Sarah. She was reaching for me but I couldn't. I couldn't save her. Shoo. Marcus rocked him gently. Tell me something good about her. Something that made you laugh. Tommy hiccuped. She used to sing really bad opera while cooking. Said it scared the rats away. Marcus chuckled. That sounds like Sarah. She once performed an entire aria at a charity gala just to embarrass a snobby board member. They traded stories until Tommy's breathing steadied. It was their new ritual, replacing nightmares with memories, fear with love. Morning brought another ritual. Mrs. Chin arrived with breakfast as she did every Saturday. The kitchen filled with the smell of dumplings and the sound of 3 generations sharing stories. Sarah loved these, Mrs. Chin said, showing Tommy how to fold the wrappers. Said they reminded her of family. We're making new family traditions, Tommy said, his fingers clumsy but determined. Right, Marcus? Right? Marcus smiled at the sight of Tommy's dumpling, misshapen but made with care. Though maybe we should stick to takeout for the fundraiser next week? The fundraiser was Tommy's idea, a benefit for Sarah's network of safe houses, now operating legally as the Sarah Blackwood Foundation. The whole community was helping. Jade designing posters, Carlos organizing entertainment, Lisa Morgan handling press coverage. I wish she could see this, Tommy said later, as they hung the posters in what used to be his old shelter. All these people coming together. She can, Marcus said softly. Through us. That evening they sat on their apartment balcony, a new tradition they called Worry Time, 15 minutes where they could voice any fears without judgment. What if my mom comes back? Tommy asked, curled in his favorite chair. Then we face it together. She'll always be your mother, Tommy. But she left you and I never will. Promise? Promise? Marcus handed him a small box. Actually, I've been wanting to give you this. Inside was a silver chain, similar to the one holding Sarah's medallion but with a different pendant, a compass rose. Your own North Star, Marcus explained. So you always know you have a home with me. Tommy's fingers traced the design. Even if your mom comes back. Even if Sarah's alive somewhere. Even if Rodriguez wins. Even if the sky falls. Marcus fastened the chain around Tommy's neck. You're my son now. Nothing changes that. Tommy launched himself into Marcus's arms, both necklaces clinking together. Later, after Tommy was asleep, Marcus stood in the doorway watching him. The compass rose glinted next to Sarah's medallion, old promises beside new ones. They were healing, slowly but surely, building something new from the broken pieces of their past. His phone buzzed. Jennifer Hayes. Marcus? We found something. About Sarah. He looked at Tommy's peaceful face, at the evidence of their growing trust in the family photos on the walls, at the dumplings drying in the kitchen. Can it wait until morning? We have dumplings to make for breakfast. Jennifer's voice softened with understanding. Of course. Family first. Family first, Marcus echoed and gently closed Tommy's door. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Martinez reviewed the final documents. Tommy sat between Marcus and Jennifer Hayes, wearing his first suit, dark blue like Marcus's. Both their necklaces gleamed against crisp white shirts. Before I make my final ruling, Judge Martinez said, I understand the child wishes to speak? Tommy stood, his voice clear despite his shaking hands. Yes, Your Honor. I've learned a lot about family this year. The angel lady, Sarah, taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who stay, who fight for you. He touched both necklaces. Marcus didn't just give me a home. He helped me build one for others too. The judge smiled. And you're requesting a name change as well? Yes, ma'am. Tommy straightened his shoulders. I want to be Tommy Blackwood. For Sarah. For Marcus. For all the kids who still need homes. From the gallery came soft sounds of approval. The courtroom was packed with Sarah's network. Mrs. Chin, Jade, Carlos, dozens of families helped by the foundation. Even Lisa Morgan was there, though her notebook remained closed. Some moments weren't for reporting. Given the overwhelming evidence of the child's welfare and happiness in Mr. Blackwood's care, Judge Martinez began, and considering the extensive community support, she paused, looking directly at Tommy. It is my pleasure to grant full legal adoption. Congratulations, Tommy Blackwood. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Marcus pulled Tommy into a tight hug, both of them crying openly. Jennifer Hayes wiped her eyes, her usual professional demeanor cracking. There's one more thing, she said, pulling out another document. The board approved it this morning. All of Sarah's safe houses are now legally registered shelters under the foundation's management. Tommy's eyes widened. Really? Really? Marcus grinned. And wait until you see what we did with the Riverside property. The transformed apartment complex gleamed in the December sun. Where once stood condemned buildings now rose modern, affordable housing. The sign read Sarah Blackwood Foundation. Hope starts here. The first of many, Marcus said as they toured the facilities. The company's new housing initiative guarantees that 30% of all developments will be affordable units. No more displacements. No more accidents. Tommy traced the foundation's logo, a compass rose inside a heart. Sarah would love this. She does love it, Mrs. Chin said firmly. She sees it through all of us. Later that week, Tommy stood before another intimidating building, Lincoln Park High School. His new backpack felt heavy with unused notebooks and freshly sharpened pencils. Nervous? Marcus asked. A little. Tommy adjusted his collar. What if they ask about before? Then you tell them whatever you're comfortable sharing. Your story is yours to tell. A familiar voice called out. Tommy? Maya, one of the kids from Sarah's network, waved from the school steps. She was a junior now, thriving in her foster home. I saved you a seat in the cafeteria, she said. Carlos's little sister's starting today too. Tommy's shoulders relaxed. Family everywhere he looked. The holidays brought new traditions. They decorated the apartment with homemade ornaments, each one representing a milestone in their journey. Mrs. Chin taught them to make traditional Christmas dumplings. Jade and Carlos organized a talent show at the shelter. On Christmas Eve, they hosted a celebration for foundation families. The Riverside Community Room overflowed with food, music, and laughter. Children who once lived in shadows now played freely, their parents sharing stories of new jobs, new homes, new beginnings. Marcus. Tommy tugged his sleeve. Can we do the thing now? Marcus nodded, calling for everyone's attention. Together, they unveiled the portrait, Sarah in her signature braid, surrounded by children, her smile radiant. Below it, a plaque read, "For Sarah Blackwood, who taught us that family is built with love, hope is built with action, and change is built one home at a time." Tommy stepped forward. The foundation isn't just about houses. It's about building families. Sarah showed us how. Now we're showing others. As if on cue, Jennifer Hayes arrived with a surprise approval for 5 more shelter locations across Chicago. The celebration grew louder, plans already forming for the new year. Later that night, in their home filled with Christmas lights and the smell of Mrs. Chen's dumplings, Tommy curled up next to Marcus on the couch. "This is what she wanted, isn't it?" he asked sleepily. "All of us together. Helping others." "It is." Marcus adjusted the blanket around them. "And wherever she is, she knows her family grew bigger than she ever imagined." Tommy touched his 2 necklaces. The medallion that led him to Marcus, the compass rose that made him a Blackwood. "Think we'll ever find her?" "I hope so." Marcus kissed the top of his son's head. "But even if we don't, she found a way to give us both what we needed most." "What's that?" "Each other. And a purpose bigger than ourselves." Outside, snow began to fall on a city slowly healing, one family at a time. In thousands of homes that night, children slept safely because Sarah Blackwood once dared to care. And in one particular home, a father and son who once were lost had finally found their way together. If this story touched your heart and made you think about family, justice, and the power of choosing to do what's right, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you narratives that challenge perspectives and warm hearts. Share your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite moment between Marcus and Tommy? How do you think Sarah's story might continue? What would you like to see in a potential sequel?